We've all heard people kicking and screaming over how displeased they are with the systems or institutions put into place that govern power, that govern control within the society that we all live with, that we all live within. Not understanding that with authority comes responsibility, and if one wants authority over their own freedom, that it bears the weight of that responsibility. Have a listen to the parable that I'm going to share with you as I break this down for you. The comfortable cage. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say will offend people who prefer comfort over truth. And that is precisely why it must be said. Authoritarian governments do not rise simply because tyrants are hungry for power. They rise because citizens become too weak to carry freedom. Because freedom is not soft. Freedom is not safe. Freedom is not comfortable. Freedom is not convenient, but rather freedom is heavy. It demands discipline. It demands courage. It demands people capable of ruling themselves. And when those people disappear, power moves in to replace them. Look around modern Western society. Not at all of the slogans, not at all of the political theatre, but rather look at the condition of the people. A population drowning in convenience, a population drowning in comfort. Food arrives with a tap, entertainment streams endlessly. Opinions fed through a glowing screen, outrage delivered daily like a scheduled broadcast. And somewhere along the way, something vital began to disappear. Responsibility. People no longer build strength of character. They outsource decisions. They outsource their own thinking. They outsource their own protection. They outsource responsibility for their own lives. And every time that happens, freedom loses ground. Let me tell you a story about a man who lived in a modern city, a city just like ours, a city that looked advanced, efficient, connected, the kind of place people called progress. Every answer lived in his pocket. His phone told him what news mattered, what opinions were acceptable and what opinions weren't, what dangers he should fear. The system knew his anger. The system knew his fears, his preferences, and most disturbingly, the same system knew his weaknesses. It fed him what kept him comfortable, and slowly, almost invisibly, the man stopped doing something essential. He stopped thinking for himself. The system told him what was true. Experts told him what was safe. Institutions told him who was responsible for problems. The government told him who to blame. And that very same man, he believed it. Because responsibility is exhausting. Thinking deeply is difficult. Standing alone requires courage. But obedience? Obedience is easy. Years passed. The city became more regulated, more monitored, more controlled. Cameras everywhere. Rules expanding. Authorities gaining power. But the man, that same man, he barely noticed, because his life was still comfortable. His food arrived on demand. His entertainment never ended. His opinions were echoed by millions of others online. Everything still felt normal. Everything to him still felt safe, stable, managed, until one day something changed. A law appeared, a restriction tightened, a freedom was quietly removed. And that same man, once again, he was outraged. How did this happen, he asked. He demanded his answers. He blamed the leaders, blamed institutions, blamed conspiracies. But the truth was far more humiliating, as it happened slowly, while he was distracted, while he was entertained, while he was delegating responsibility for his life to the systems designed to manage him. The cage was not forced upon him. He actually helped build it. Here is the truth most people cannot tolerate hearing. Authoritarian systems are rarely imposed on strong populations, but rather they are welcomed by weak ones. Welcomed by citizens who are tired of thinking, tired of taking responsibility, tired of carrying the weight of their own freedom. Because freedom demands something that a lot of people consider brutal. It demands accountability. Accountability for your actions, your failures, your discipline, your courage. But when people refuse to rule themselves, they inevitably invite someone else to rule for them. And power is always willing to accept that invitation. It arrives slowly, disguised as safety, disguised as stability, disguised as compassion. We'll protect you. We'll manage things. We'll make the world fair. And a fearful population will always sigh with relief. Finally, they'll say, someone else will carry the burden. But power never accepts partial surrender. It will always take more authority, more control, more obedience. Because once citizens abandon self-governance, authority becomes inevitable. And this is where the deepest hypocrisy reveals itself. People will scream about tyranny whilst living lives that require constant supervision. They demand freedom while refusing the discipline required to sustain it. They want independence without responsibility, strength without hardship, liberty without courage. And those things cannot exist together. Freedom is sustained by individuals who govern themselves. Men and women capable of discipline, capable of confronting truth, capable of standing upright without begging authority to carry their lives for them. Remove those people from a society and freedom collapses. Not through invasion, not through conquest, but rather through their own moral decay. So if this speech feels uncomfortable, good. Because discomfort is exactly where honesty begins. The real question is not about governments. Governments will always seek power. The real question is actually about the people. Are they strong enough to live as free individuals? Or are they secretly hoping someone else will manage their lives? Because when a society becomes addicted to comfort, afraid of responsibility, and desperate for protection, it does something tragic. It builds its own prison, brick by brick, policy by policy, convenience by convenience, until one day, the same people who built the cage are standing inside it. And then comes the final question. The question that echoes through every fallen republic in history. How did we lose our freedom? They will ask. But by then, the answer is already written. In the habits of the people. In their own dependence. Within their own cowardice disguised as compassion. Freedom was not stolen, but rather their freedom was abandoned. So if you truly care about liberty, stop asking the childish question. Stop asking who it is that will protect us. Start asking something far more dangerous. Am I strong enough to protect my own freedom? Because the greatest defense against authoritarian power is not revolution, but rather it is character. A population of disciplined, accountable individuals cannot easily be ruled, but a population addicted to comfort, afraid of the truth, and desperate for protection will build its own cage and then spend generations wondering who it is that actually locked the door. Hear that? That is the sound of freedom dying. Allow that one to sink in. Truth wears the crown. God bless.